Thank you, Eli, as ever, for a wonderful introduction. I'm not going to talk about that, Eli. I mean it. No, I will, but I am going to do something else first, because I was late getting here this morning, and I missed really my participation in the sound session earlier. And for me, my sound appetite has been whetted, but not quite fulfilled. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of sound, if that's okay with you all. Yes, because I have been working with sound like these guys for over 20 years, and to hear you both going about emoto and cymatics like that is just rich for me, and it's a great foundation for some sound I'd like to share with you all. So the way I approach and teach sound, wow, that's loud in my ear now. I'll step over here. The way I teach sound is a bit different to others, because for me what I found when I started doing sound work with myself and discovering my own resistances to really having a go, and then when I started to bring it to other groups, I found a quirk in Western people when we were being asked to do certain types of sound. So I kind of lead it in a different way by understanding why some of us struggle to participate in sounds where we are looking to create a pure tone, which is really what we're doing when we're doing ahs and oohs and things like that, is we're looking for a tone rather than a note. And if we are half-hearted in doing it, we can't ever really get that tone. So I'd like to do a little bit of that with you this morning, if that's okay. So Buddha used to say that words were signposts. And he meant it quite literally, because I can kind of talk about the bottle of water, I can talk about the projector in front of me, I can talk about the microphone in my hand, and I'm signposting you to those objects to the exclusion of everything else. And if I didn't have the words, I could just go like this. And I'm obviously referring to these things, but the words can perform that function. And in our culture, we're only taught a few ways of acceptable ways of making sound. And if it doesn't fit within the remit of that, we feel stupid. You know, we're like, this is pointless. Why am I doing this? And it's because our mind doesn't understand that these sounds in a way are pointless, in that they're not referring to anything. They're not referring to an object outside of yourself or an idea. They are about changing your state. It's about changing vibration. It's about what's going on within, not without. So I'd like to approach sound with you in that sort of spirit, which is actually, all we're really doing is making noises, and really, they are pointless because you're not referring anything to anyone. It's not communication. It's a sound you're making for yourself. So it's very different from singing and speaking. And I always say to people when I'm starting to lead sound with them that we're not singing here. Not when we're going for tone. When we're singing, we're interested in the note. And when we're sounding like this, we're interested in the tone. So to get a little bit experimental in this, I want to just explore some of the everyday sounds that we use. So we're going to look at some vowels first of all, because it's really interesting how powerful they can be. So everyone here did an ah earlier. It was a lovely ah, a love sound. Thank you, Giles. But I'd like you all now to give me a different kind of ah. I want you to give me the ah of pain if you've hit yourself with a hammer. What would that sound like? Ah! Yes, all right. What about the ah of a cute baby? Or the ah of realization? Ah. Or what about the ah of shock and surprise? This is the character of ah. It's a character, and it is rich in what it shows us. So we are used to playing around with sound at the word level. So I like to say, I mean, doing this for many years, you know, we spell all our words because all our words are spells. You know, and they change your state, they change your meaning, all the rest of it. But when we're playing around with words, it's like the operating system level of mind. When we're dealing with character, it's like the machine code. So, for example, across Europe you have 40 plus languages, but they all share the same alphabet. The installation, the operating system is different, but the machine code is the same. And yet they don't understand each other without learning. And yet we're only dealing with 26 characters. It's quite a phenomenal thing. However, anywhere in the world, if you gave that out of pain, that out of realization, that out of shock, it doesn't matter what language somebody speaks. As long as it was an honest sound, they would know how big the realization was, how much you hurt yourself, how cute you thought the baby was. And it's because when we're dealing at the character level, our sound is always embodied. And one of the problems that we have when we are talking about the things that we're passionate about is that it's not embodied. Your spells aren't embodied. People can't feel you. And then we wonder why we're not having the effect we want to have. And it's because we're just talking about how we feel rather than speaking from it and with it, which has a much greater chance of having effect because you have embodied cymatics at that point. People can feel the power of your spell and they can change. So what about the of a nice meal? What about the ooh of pleasure? That's not your ooh of pleasure. How many people paused there? Do you know why you paused though? Because a part of you knew that if you made it, you couldn't make that sound without, whoa. That was a sound. You couldn't make that sound without giving it away. Yeah? But you all know it. So you know this machine code level anyway. Just don't like playing there because it can feel uncomfortable. So we're going to take a little bit of a journey through some of the vowels in a way which is about reclaiming our right to make them in courageous and experimental and playful ways. Because the thing is, whenever I've done it from the approach of chanting or mantra with people, we encounter a cultural bridge that is quite mentally limiting because it's like it's somebody else's. But actually, the vowels don't belong to anyone. They don't belong to anyone. It's a common ancestors for all of us. So even though we may learn about the sciences of things like, say for example, chanting from India or something like that, they may have been the custodians of some of that knowledge, but it's not theirs. They held that branch of wisdom so that we could use it as a launch pad for our own reconnection and our ownership of these natural, kind of like native truths. There's my first seed of native coming in, which is that it belongs to all of us. So it's like nobody owns the beating of a skin or piece of wood. That's a common ancestor. There's no cultural appropriation there that people sometimes refer to with Westerners using vowels in new ways and beating skins. It's like this is actually a common ancestors thing, and okay, these others held it for us, but it doesn't belong to them. And for us, I think there's a real deep healing that can come from realizing that this is ours too. And that's the way I want to approach these vowels with you today. So, we're going to do it. I've got a very particular sequence because we could use lowercase, uppercase, all that sort of stuff, but we're going to do a particular sequence because I've got a point I'd like to make in this. So all we're going to do is a journey through the vowels. That's all it is. Everyone up for that? Yeah? You do it for standing up for it? Yeah. It's a great place to do it in Avebury here because what a wonderful place to anchor this sort of embodied energy. So we're just going to start off with an A. Now A is the first character in the alphabet. It's the first response when we are overwhelmed or shocked or surprised, as we saw earlier, pain, realization, all these things. It's like a spontaneous thing. The A of shock when we're surprised, is actually a claim of space. It's a claim of space. You're telling the creature or the person that surprised you, I'm here, this is mine. This area, occupied. Yeah, exactly. Babies as well, they're getting in, and we kind of see the distress side of it, but it's a claim. It's a real statement of, I am here, this area is mine. And I always find that the quality of the rest of the sounds that we make are determined by the quality of our ah. And so the bigger and more brazen we can get with our ah, the better the results of the rest of the sounds that we do. So earlier, when we're doing ah in a singing way, we often do a sort of dropped jaw ah, like, oh. We don't want to do that. We're going to do a wide mouth ah. Ah. Yeah? Okay, so let's take a moment to just close our eyes and get centered. We'll take a few breaths. Yeah, that's right. And we're just going to do a few of them as we try to see how the group alignment works. So a nice, just as you gave me your ah, pain and baby noises, courageously claim the right to make this nice loud ah sound, and let's see how it sounds. All right, so going to take a deep breath in. Nice, very nice. Let's do another one. All right, one more. Lovely. That's good. Did you notice the difference in that ah to the ah we did earlier? Yeah, it feels different, doesn't it? Okay. Now we're just going to do an E. Yeah? Okay, let's do an E and see what that feels like. Yeah, one more. All right, one more, then we're going to stick an on the end. All right, let's pause a moment. What was the difference between the two that you noticed? Anyone got anything they'd like to say about what they noticed as the difference between the ah and the E? Anyone? Yes?
Always feels more up.
Yep.
E feels like it goes out.
Yeah, one more vertical, the other one more horizontal. Yes. There are some horizontal and some vertical sounds, and we're going to explore that a little bit. Anyone else get anything they noticed?
The E was very smooth.
Yeah, it resonated right across my chest.
Okay. And what did the ah do?
Oh, that was more open.
Okay, yes. And what about the what's that like? Yes. So the thing is, when we're doing words like this, so when people are talking about doing an album, for example, it's not a word. It's a set of characters. So if you do an aw sound, let's do an ah. So do a quick ah, short one. Ah. That's right. Where's the sound going? And where else? Out. All right, now doing Where's the sound going? In. Okay. So for me, the reason I waited before I asked you to put an on the end is because for me, The is about internalizing the vibration that you've just realized and created. And until you've got a nice one, there's no point doing that. You might as well keep going with the sound until you break through your own crackles, distortion, voice wavers and crackles, until you get to a nice vibrational frequency or a group accord or harmony, and then to internalize and carry that vibration deep within to activate the cymatic effect and to activate that emotive effect. But so we realize the sound, then we internalize it. It's that sort of like pulsing rhythm of, you know, the vowel and the consonant. You know, there's two different types of sound. So the next one's really interesting. So I want you to say the next vowel for me. I. So say I. I. Okay. What does it begin with? Ah. And what does it finish with? E. Okay. So there's a progression in the vowels. The third one is made up of the first two put together. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, we'll do an I, but we're not doing I, we're doing A into E. Okay, and now I want you to see if you can get the vertical effect of this one, because this is a very vertical sound. The very character of the I, the shape of it shows us this. So let's have a go with A into E. Everyone up for that? Okay. To slow the transition between them. Slow, don't jump from A to E, see if you can transition between the two. All right. And again. Slow down that transition in the middle. You should almost hear and feel the y sound in the middle of it. So let's go again. Lovely, let's just do two more of them. Last one. Pause a moment. We should always really pause in the aftermath of sound, because the slight shifts in space and state that happen in the silence after the sound as the cymatic effect kicks in. All right. What did you notice about that one? What was happening in the body with the sound?
Felt like I was going up and over a hill.
Okay.
I got people back down.
Nice. Where was the sound moving? Yes. And feeling it moving through the body almost as if it was drawing an I shape. This is that vertical sound. So if you make an ah sound, it comes from generally from deeper in the body than the E. So do an ah, 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 and then an E, E. And now do one into the other. The sound moves up and your throat has to change shape to throw it up here to make that E sound. So this is really us, in a way, getting to know how to use our organs, musical instruments. You know, we're composing ourselves before we decompose. You know, I mean it. And we use sound in all interesting places. We measure space and volume. We talk about each other as being sound, and it's all because of the importance of sound through the importance of cymatics, you know, the science that shows it to us. So we're going to add the next one on here, but we're going to do it as a sequence. So we're going to do I into O. So it's A, E, making I, and then we're going to add an O on the end of that. So it's all one sound. So we're just going to do like I, O, yeah? Okay. You up for it? Everyone up for that? Yeah? Okay, let's see what it says. This is to see what it feels like, not what it sounds like. It's about what it feels like. Okay, let's have a go. Close your eyes, your breath. So just pause for a moment and get settled, and just consider what we're doing here. We're going to do a nice, try to draw that line of the I in the body with the sound, A into E, and then see what happens when you try and turn that into an O. All right, here we go. All right, another one. And again. Shorter I, longer O. Two more. Two more. And then close your eyes and pause. Let everything relax for a moment. Just stand for a moment in the aftermath of the sound. Okay, then open your eyes. Anyone notice a shift starting to happen in their state, in the space around them? Okay, this is because this literally is about changing state. And in the science of enlightenment, which is all about what causes the light of the universe to be able to be received by my mind, my emotions, my body, my spirit. And it's actually all about vibratory state and the alignment of the receiving substance, actually how light works. And what we're doing when we're doing this, as you saw in the cymatics, is changing the shape and the state of the receiving substance so that we can experience new states. And the more we work with it, you can change your perceptual states and your state of well-being and ease in yourself just through making some vowels. I mean, it really is not a big ask to make some vowels. So what did you notice about that, the transition in the body and the sound? Did you notice what it was doing? Could anyone feel what was happening? Yes, yes.
Mine was specifically on the heart.
Okay. Because what would, yes, somebody else there?
I felt it was going from the heart to the higher heart and then into the throat chakra.
Lovely. Anyone else? Is-
The bubble that they showed.
Yes.
It sounds like a sort of an A, and then an E, and then a...
Yes, and then it comes out, exactly. And so we're drawing this energy up and then offering it out in the form of the O there, yeah? So what we're going to do now is just to show you the difference between horizontal and vertical sound. Because really when we're toning, you almost always want to aim for vertical, which is the feeling of it going up and down the body, changing your state. So we're going to stick, now this is an interesting, you can sit down for a moment because I've got something to say for a minute. I need to let your legs rest. I was working with all the vowels in sound with groups for years, using the next vowel as we were taught it. And it was for years, there was something wrong in the sound for me, in the transition of the sounds. There was something wrong with you. Something wrong with you. And it was because, and we'll do an experiment in a minute so you can experience it, but I then realised, and as some of you know, spelling work has been my thing for longer than activism or anything else. And what I was aware of was that you, in a way, is a word masquerading as a character. That's not actually that character at all. And I found that this was deeply related to what I'm about to talk about on the native thing, which is about how each of these characters convey an embodied feeling. Something that's really natural and native to all humans. So like the Av realization is universal. The Av pain is universal. Doesn't matter what language you end up speaking, the Av pain is the Av pain. And I discovered in my journey of reconnecting with my own ancestors, not just the human ancestor, but the animal. And there's a really interesting thing about the animal kingdom where we are mammals, aren't we? Everyone agree? We're mammals? Yeah? Okay, so if there was a mammal outside there and it made a noise, would you recognize it? If it was a dog, if it was a horse, a cat, a goat, donkey, all of these things. Would it matter what size it was or where it came from? No. Wouldn't matter what colour it was, would it? No. All mammals are recognisable by a core sound. What's ours? The very fact that you even have any pause on that whatsoever is part of what the next section of my talk is about, which is about our disconnection from real deep embodiment. And it was through this that I discovered part of what the correct sound of the next vowel is. And it's one that we already know, and we spoke about it earlier. And it is the oo of pleasure, the of effort. You know, so it's interesting if we look at where do we use the sounds oo and ooh, ooh. Where? Yeah, Cantona, absolutely. That's gold, David, that is gold. You have made my morning with that. He said, Cantona, you know, ooh, Cantona. But it's interesting because that vowel, we have two sounds for it. So we'll say it as an oo, and we'll also say it as like an umbrella, yeah, or an oo sound. So where do we make those sounds naturally? Sex, yes, where else? Effort, childbirth. I've heard a few babies being born and there was in every one of them. Ooh gave rise to it going in there, and is how it got out. But here's the interesting thing. Where do we use you? Accusation and othering. Accusation and othering. So we have our sound that is supposed to be of love and effort, pleasure and effort, replaced by accusation and othering. Pretty insidious, guys. That's pretty like deep machine code resetting this. It's really powerful. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick an oo on the end of our vowel sequence. But when we do it, it's really different. It's a really interesting sound because it is almost entirely vertical when we're doing it this way. So really want you to notice the difference of going from an O into an ooh and what happens when we're doing that. Is everyone up for that? So we're literally going to do what sounds like I-O-U. It's going to sound like that. And I used to have people doing I-O-U until I realised it felt all wrong. So we'll do some I-O-U, see what that feels like, and then if we've got time, we'll maybe look at you, but probably not. No point in bringing distortion into it. Let's stand up and do our last set, and then I'll talk about native stuff. Take a moment to get our standing position. So we're going to do I as A into E, then O, and then U. Sound all right? Okay. Nice, nice. Shorter beginning bits, longer U. Lovely. Short A, short O, longer U. Now let's just do some ooh. Ooh. One more. Let's pause with our eyes closed and just be in the aftermath of that a moment. Let's just gently allow your eyes to come open. How's that? Anyone notice a shift in the space again? Yeah? How did it feel? That's why the 5 of them are paired up like that. Yeah. I mean, for me, that's my go-to warm-up, is going through, that's my go-to sound warm-up, is just going through the vowels like that. You know? Do you notice the difference between the horizontalness of the O and the flip into making it an U? Anyone notice that? Yeah, it's really something. And the more you kind of get into that sense, the more you can get a sense of what's going on in your body when you're making sound. The best place, you can sit down now, yeah? The best place that you can to notice the experience of what sound is doing inside of you when you're making sounds like that is in the bath. And if you lie in the bath and put your ears under the water and you make any of these sounds, you will be really stunned by what you experience, because through the air, you could only hear up to about 20 kilohertz, 24 kilohertz, but through sound and liquid, you can hear up to 100 kilohertz. That's why your voice sounds different to you than it does to anyone else, and why when you listen to yourself on a recording, you're like, no, I don't sound like that. It's like, well, through the air you do, but you're not listening to yourself through the air, you're listening to yourself through the bone and the sort of liquid of your body. So get yourselves in the bath and stick your ears under there and see what it feels like. It really is transformational. We're actually going to do one more word, one more to wrap up, and it's a healing of the Om sound, because the way we do Om now is O plus and originally it was a threefold sound, and I want to do the threefold sound with you as A, U, Is everyone up for that? All right, you can sit or stand for that. It's all right, because I realise some of you might be tired of it. But we're just going to do A, U, Is everyone up for that? Please, just a few. Just see what it feels like. A proper healed Om is what it's meant to be. And it's because what it really is it's about the A is realisation and claim of space. The U is this incredible upliftment and acknowledgement of the pleasure of being. And the is the internalisation of that vibration. And if you look at the way the Sanskrit actually writes the Om, it's actually a threefold character that almost looks like the bulbousness of the ah, the little upliftment of the oo in the middle, if any of you can picture it, and then that encapsulation at the end is the So we're going to have a go at that. Yeah? All right. We'll just do 3 of them, see what it feels like. No obligation to stand. Oh, you're doing it anyway, that's fine. All right, so let's take a quiet moment and get a sense of, and we want to really feel what's happening in our body here. Okay, I'll take a breath and begin. It's not ooh, nice vertical ooh. Last one. We'll just pause in the aftermath. Just pause for a moment. Nice deep, slow breath in. And if you just allow your eyes to come open. Who knows the difference in that combination? Little spell combo there. Character combo, different from the previous ones. Thank you, you can sit down. So the point of that exercise is really all about just to get you experimenting. All we did was a few vowels a few times. Did it feel all right? Did it feel interesting? Yeah? That's it. That's it for me. If it felt interesting, then go and play. Yeah. Play with the sound. You know, go and share it with nature, see how nature responds to it, because I do think we're sonic gardeners, really. You know, really do. And when I see nature respond to courageous sounding, it's like water on parched soil. So go and give your sounds to the things you encounter, not just the people. You know, there's something about the human heart that it does spontaneously burst into song and sound when it's feeling love. You know? So, anyway, I've realised I've eaten most of my time, but that's all right. I hope everyone enjoyed that little sound journey. Yeah. And just to tie it into like a segue before we go into the next section, for me, the value of some of that as well is, I actually call it, in the way that I teach it, is I call it character development. It's character development, understanding how character feels, because the words are often all we've got to offer people for our expression of our innermost needs and desires and our highest aspirations. And if we're just chucking them out there without really thinking about what's in our spells, then, you know, how can we be really upset when things don't go the way that we would prefer? Because we weren't really present, embodied, and expressing the fullness of our character in it. So character development is really about playing with it. And if you think about it, that expression, you know, if you can just weave in a more embodied I, a more embodied into your words, I guarantee you'll start to notice a difference in the impact on people as they start to feel you showing up in the space more, rather than just talking about the stuff that you feel. You know, this is a really lovely way of kind of loading feeling into your words in a way that's quite grounding, rather than disembodying, isn't it? It's quite a ground. Everyone feel quite grounded after that? Yeah. Okay. So the natives. where's Eli? Now I'm going to do your native thing for how long have I got? Some minutes. I've got way more written down here than I can do in that number of minutes, but that's okay. So one of the things I have deeply struggled with and has been to my detriment to my success. Thank you. 10 minutes. So 10 minutes on natives. Really? I thought I had 15. Ish. Okay. Um, was that no matter what I was doing in terms of my personal development or my exploration of other systems or methods, I didn't really feel like there was anything that I could identify with. I want to own that, not in terms of the modern meaning of it, but nothing that I felt really encapsulated what I was about. And I tried many different alternative things, many different alternative lifestyle things. And none of it still nothing really fit. But a number of years ago, and I may have mentioned this to some of you before, I had this curiosity in my spelling journey with people, and especially doing rights with guys and stuff. And it was really curious to me that Western educated people and Westerners in general would refer to indigenous people without referring to themselves. They'd refer to natives without thinking of themselves in amongst that. And I'd be like scratching my head going, but if you're not native, what are you? What does that mean? If you're not indigenous, what are we actually saying here? You know, what are we saying? This is bizarre, and why is there this lens that is native, non-native that we have? And it puzzled me for years. And it wasn't until I was speaking with a friend who was living in Mexico, and she went into this really passionate expression of her own journey of feeling like she had been robbed, and this is an English woman living in Mexico, and she felt she'd been robbed of the songs of her people and robbed of the stories of her people, not because they didn't have them, but because they were taken away so long ago that we'd forgotten. And that the ones who were getting called colonists were actually just the first who were colonized. And in a way, this whole notion of, even the notion of white shame and guilt, to me, is, you know, many of you have heard me talk about the male shame thing, where, and I've realized it's the same on this level, where, so with men, what we have is boys coming into the world where it's socially mandated and acceptable that they can be punished for the deeds of others. Punished for the deeds of people long dead, long distant. It's like okay to ask this person here to take up less space or to behave differently because of the deed of somebody over there. It's not really just. And I mean the same here in this case, when we're talking about the whole white shame, white guilt thing, is it's like, well, it wasn't you. And to be held accountable for, to contract yourself, to constrict yourself, to take up less room, be less of who you could be, out of the belief that you owe penance for the deeds of those long dead and distant is a bit of a wound. And what I discovered is that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Toltec relationship with this in a moment, but what I discovered was that actually the things that we call alternative aren't really alternative. They're not really alternative. I've noticed that it is actually a natural healing. It's a natural decolonization of the native descendants in the West, of Western European natives, the people who were colonized and conquered long ago. Most of you here are descendants of those, and to me, those who are no longer identifying with the world that they grew up in, not agreeing with the values, the standards, the aspirations, the measures, the direction of the place that you came from, but somehow not knowing what it is I'm moving into. Some spiritual something, you know, which is what I think we're in the direction most people are headed in. Whereas in a way what I've realized is it's not really that. It's coming back to that which is native. It's not alternative. So alternative medicine is a return to native medicine. Alternative gardening, permaculture, forest gardening, it's just a return to more native gardening. And so I realized in my journey what was actually happening was it was a natural healing into a nativeness, you know, rediscovery of the nativity of the Westerner, which is native roots. So what I realized is the whole of the alternatives, and what I mean by that is, you know, so I started to look at, well, what is the thing that marks a native from what we call a non-native? And I was looking at how I had been so desperate to convince the world that I had come from of the value and authority of the ways that I had discovered. Desperate to convince. desperate for authority. Please can't you see and understand this is incredible and interesting and wonderful and amazing? But then I realised after banging my head against that wall for a long time that perhaps these are not my people. And what I realised is, so some of you might have seen my ancestor talk where, you know, this is all really the ancestor's cave, this isn't the real world, all of this. This is like grandmother's cave. We're sheltered from the real world right now, so that we can do this, regardless of whether it's raining, snowing, or sunny outside. So, yeah, I was losing my thread there, going on about Granny's cave. Yeah, so what I realised was that there was I, desperate to convince people who had never left the gifts of their ancestors. They'd never stepped outside. And to me it was like, the natives are outside, with the wind blowing their hair all over the place, with these people in Granny's cave going, there's no such thing as wind. What are you on about? There's no such thing as wind. And we were all out there with our hair blown away. What are you on about? Come outside, it's amazing. And I lost my desperation to convince. And then I realised, why am I desperate to defend myself when you look down your nose with scorn and derision at my choices, when your values are completely different? And in fact, the way that you're championing, if I look at the way your people live and how they are, they hate themselves. They're sick. They're depressed. They're medicated and overstimulated. They're all killing themselves. They don't want to be here. Why am I defending myself to you? Your values are shot, mate. Why am I worried about your scorn? You know, it's a real deep healing perspective to realise that the whole point of a lot of the sovereignty and law stuff is really about, how do I get through to you that I am not obliged to live and value the things that you wish to live and value by? And this is where all of this segued together for me into understanding that actually the places that all comes together is by understanding native rights, indigenous rights, and being able to own them and claim them despite where you're born, despite how the people around you view you. So one of my campaigns at the moment is you know, working towards trying to get native reservations in the West here. Because at the minute, it's like, so for me, I'm looking for ways that I can say to these people, I don't share your values. I don't share your aspirations. I don't share, you know, what you think a good human is or should be or do to be a good human. I don't share any of those things with you. And it doesn't mean I don't love you as a brother or sister, don't value you and think you should have a space to live and be, but I should also have a space to live and be in the way that I want to. How can I get that through to you? And over 15 plus years of activism, watching us all trying this in the courts in different ways, I've realised, wait a minute, there's no debate here. As soon as I get into debate in your language, I'm lost because you're enjoying the conversation and I'm like having to find words that aren't mine. And so I really realised that, so not only do I no longer seek to use their words, I also no longer seek to have my ways understood by people who don't ascribe any value to them anyway. And it's a real quietening rather than some big bold claim to return to one's own nativeness, which is actually, I don't have some big bullshit point to make. I don't need to storm into the space and demand something back that was never mine. I just want to be left alone to do my own thing. And so I'm moving for the right of us to be, who would consider themselves to be alternative, to perhaps realise maybe you're on your journey to healing your own nativeness. And this manifests in thousands of ways where, you know, like the image I get in mind. So for me, the first step in the healing of our nativeness is that all natives are moved by the unseen forces within and around them and have some sense or value of acknowledgement for that, no matter what they call it. All natives have a sense of the interconnectedness and interdependence of all life and find themselves wanting to be more and more deeply in that. Does some of you relate to that? Yeah? So it doesn't matter what form it takes. Indigenous rights is about championing your right to find and rediscover that. And in a way we are trying on the garbs and the songs and the practices of our native brethren in other cultures, but not to keep using them to build the bridge to our own again, to reclaim our own nativeness again. And so when I like to think of, like, you know, images of some sort of, you know, middle-aged corporate guy at 5 Rhythms, you know, but he's getting there and he's just listening to his shirt off and all of a sudden he's starting to move in new ways. Move as he's being stirred from within. And you'll have all the people scorning on this guy for his bumbling and his fumbling and how stupid it looks or whatever, when actually it's like, leave him alone. His masterful demonstration of that energy moving through him will come in time. He's just beginning. And the same applies to all of it, to our sounding, our singing, our relationship with earth, all the rest of it, to realize that this is a deep healing taking place. Deep healing. And it's a natural healing. And it really is. I do see it as a natural decolonization. So I've got 5 minutes. I'm claiming them, Eli. I've actually got 7, but I just want to tie in with something, and it's a little bit out there, but you're quite an out there lot, so I'm going to go there. And it is about what do we mean when we talk about colonization? What do we mean by a colony? What is this? This is a new word for me in my vocabulary because I wasn't really using it until I spent time in Mexico recently. Before, I was using the Toltec language for this, and it's really controversial, so I never really spoke about it much. So in the Toltec tradition, they believe something happened to us many years ago. There was a kind of an intervention in some way, but they consider it parasitic. Now, some natives refer to this as wetico. Some of you may have heard of wetico. The Toltecs have a view of it that they just refer to it as a parasite or the visitor. Now, I'm not talking about worms here, although worms are obviously a parasite as well. I'm talking about something that can affect our behavior, our thoughts, and our feelings, and how we have this wound in our mind that dismisses things based on their size. So if something's tiny, we don't worry about it. Oh, it's just an ant walking about the place. That's fine, no worries. And so we dismiss it based on its size. But that was a big poisonous spider. You might have a different reaction. And so we dismiss the impact of smaller things that may be operating within us. But you all know how it feels to get sick. It's not nice, is it? Your whole system can be taken over and made to feel terrible by a tiny thing that's got inside you. Tiny, tiny thing. And I want to talk about, there's a couple of very famous parasites that I think illustrate the point I'm trying to make. Is anyone aware of the bovine liver fluke? Because it is a wonder. So it's a wonder, because the bovine liver fluke moves through 2 species to get to its destination. So what happens is, what it does is it lives in cows. It goes out in cow poo. And there's a great National Geographic video on this on YouTube. And what it does is the egg is on the cow poo. A snail eats the cow poo, can't digest the liver fluke cell or whatever it is, or egg, and it gets passed out through the snail slime. Ants then eat the snail slime and ingest the liver fluke egg, and and it's fascinating the way the bovine liver fluke works because it exerts selective mind control on the ant. And what it does is the ant is allowed to behave exactly as it wants to all of the time unless there is a cow present. And if a cow comes into the area, all the ants that are infected will run up to the top of a blade of grass to wait to get eaten.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Against their volition. And then if the cow goes away and they don't get eaten, the ant gets to go about its business again. And then obviously when the cow eats the ant, the egg hatches, burrows through into the liver, and lives in the cow. That blows my mind. That blows my mind. This tiny thing is able to move through 2 species to get to its destination. What order of awareness are we neglecting here? Do we dismiss because it's tiny? Yeah. And so when the Toltecs speak about the parasite, they speak about it in this way, because the way a parasite works is it tricks the host into thinking you are it. So the way mistletoe works, so mistletoe is a parasite, and a tree feeds it because it believes it is the tree. And so the Toltecs say that that's what has happened to us, is we have been tricked into thinking an I that is not I, is I. And feed its hungers and its desires. Now here's the things about a parasite. It doesn't understand the host's needs for well-being. It's only interested in its own. So it ends up keeping the host in a low state of well-being. It doesn't know how to take care of the host's environment, so it will tend to be destructive to the host's environment. If we look at the behavior of what we call the colony, the colonized humans, they exhibit these properties. It takes from the environment around it, doesn't just spews out toxins and poison. To the people who are living within it and by its values and standards, they're in a low state of well-being, they hate themselves, don't want to be here, find themselves insatiable with hungers that don't make them feel good, but they don't know why they keep doing it. I'm not saying this is what it is, I'm saying it's an interesting perspective. Yes?
Why is the cow anymore the destination of the ant or the snail?
Because that's where it hatches. It's just the egg that moves through the other two. Yeah. And I think it's the larvae in the ant. So it's like hatches in the ant, larval stage there, and then matures in the other one. And to me, it doesn't matter whether it's destination or not. It's the fact that it does that transition with incredible intelligence. So just in terms of how the Toltecs would view how it affects us, because they would say it's got into our mind. And so there's an interesting thing where it's tricked us into thinking we're a visitor here. And it will usurp everything. It will usurp your spirituality, it will usurp your belief systems, because it's the visitor. And in a way, it will do other things like, there's really interesting quirks. Like it's always claiming the central ground. So this is where the terms alternative and isms come from. And it's also where we get these interesting notions of the earth being dirty. You know, I'm dirty. What earthling has that opinion? What earthling has that opinion? There's really interesting things like, so from that position, there's weird things like actions that aren't actions. So they'll say, oh, you're growing your beard. And I'm like, no, you shave. One of them's an action, the other one isn't. And it's from that part of mind that this operates. A lot of the work that I do is about how do we beat that. But what's interesting to me is this really knitted together for me in terms of in the healing of my own nativeness, understanding that when I was hearing my native brothers and sisters talking about the Wetiko and the Toltecs talking about their thing, realizing perhaps this is what we're dealing with in the language of colonization. And so when I'm talking about the natural decolonization, what we're actually talking about is human ancestral lines which had a kind of infection that have managed to integrate and overcome it in the way that the biosphere has always done. So there used to be Lyle Watson wrote, I'm just going to finish, Lyle Watson wrote a great book on evolutionary theory. He's a great evolutionary biologist. It's called Life Tide. And in it he talks about the progression through the planet's forms, the complexity of the forms, but he says comets and meteors and stuff used to be bad omens because pestilence and plague would often follow. And he was saying this was the biosphere's response to this new matter and new blueprints coming from space because it can't be sick, it can't poo it out, it's got to integrate and absorb or be taken out. And in a way, the suggestion of the Toltec work is that that's what we're dealing with, is that we've had this bit of an infestation. It's all right, there's benefits that have come from it because we've got loads of fruits from it, but what we're dealing with now with what I consider to be you guys, the new natives who are healing and integrating this, is that we're returning to our earthy nativeness, but with all these amazing fruits of being disconnected and disembodied. So I'm not writing off as being a terribly bad thing, but it's just an interesting perspective. I'm really out of time. I could say a lot more on it, but I decided to smash in some sounds.